Today we have Matt Campbell, the CEO of Native Sun, a major player in Massachusetts cannabis scene. Matt, you have a very interesting background coming from the world of beverage distribution before making your leap into cannabis. And now you run multiple dispensaries, along with, of course, a cultivation facility that came online. And yeah, today we're going to be diving into how your background in beverage industry has shaped your execution in the ever-changing Massachusetts market. I think everyone can attest that you have built Native Sun to being a very much so an industry name in the state of Massachusetts, and I would love to dive into exactly how you went about doing that. But first, tell me a little bit about your big jump from the beverage industry into cannabis. What inspired the transition?
That's a great question. It's kind of a interesting story. So I was in beverage industry almost a decade. I specialized in craft beer. So I worked in all three tiers of the craft beer side of that business. So started out in retail.
When you say tiers, what do you mean tiers?
Yes, that's definitely an alcohol industry term. So they call it a three-tier system where you have the producer, the distributor, and the retailer. And for a very long time, those were required to be legally separated entities. So similar to cannabis, how you can only have 3 dispensaries in Massachusetts. If you had a distributor, you couldn't own the retailers, you couldn't own the breweries. There had to be that degree of separation. So I was very fortunate. I got to work on all 3 of those tiers. So started in retail, went to the brewery side, and then moved over to distribution. So I got to experience that business from all the different angles that it takes to get a beer produced and to a customer in Massachusetts. And I think there's a lot of parallels between the industries, but I'll tell you, I remember this. He brought it up to me many years later, but early in my career, I told one of my bosses, as soon as they legalize cannabis, that's the business I'm going to go in. And this was, probably 2012 or 2013.
Right.
It's something I've always had a tremendous passion for. And my focus was on the commerce side of, selling, distributing cannabis, but also extraction and making extract products. Way back in the day when it was a very dangerous backyard activity to, now where I've been able to work on, multi-million-dollar labs and advanced extraction projects. So I had reached a level in the beer industry. I worked for it was a really cool company called the Massachusetts Beverage Alliance. So we were a very small team of craft beer focused professionals who essentially we worked for the 5 Miller Coors distributors in the state. So Massachusetts broken up into 5 territories, and there's an independent distributor in each one that all sell, Miller Coors, some combination of many popular beers. And what we did was we centralized the small boutique craft beer business under our office so that if you were a small producer, you could deal with my team instead of having to deal with 5 separate people. But you got the advantage of we were shipping the beer out on the trucks that had Coors Light on them, Miller Light on them. So very wide distribution footprint. And then we had kind of that hands-on approach and the education and training and knowledge to really make sure that the boutique craft beers were well represented in the market. And I saw some trends. I was on the buying side. We were going through millions of dollars of beer a month and had great access to the sales data in the state, distribution data in the state. And, kind of from the inside, I started seeing the signs of that the wave we had been riding was about to crash, and craft beer had a really great moment, but the market preference was shifting. And this was around the time when the first flavored seltzers were coming out, the alcoholic sodas that popped up for a little while, and then breweries were being really, really successful with flavored beers. And I saw this kind of trend of everybody chasing each other. Somebody would come out with a really popular flavored beer, and then I'd get 10 calls with essentially knockoff products looking for distribution. And I took a chance. I actually started in cannabis off of a Craigslist application to work for Theory Wellness. And it was total random chance. I honestly had a bad day at the beer company, and I went on Craigslist. I typed in marijuana jobs. Two came up. There was Theory Wellness, where I ended up working, and then Patriot Care was called at the time, now the Cannabis.
Right.
Interviewed with both, and I landed at Theory, and never looked back. That was such an incredible opportunity and exciting time in the industry. I got a chance to learn and build things from the ground up and make the mistakes back when you could afford to, and carry that experience forward in Massachusetts here.
Right. Yeah, I think right as the industry was coming up, the best way I think another operator put it to me was you could hop in the river with the boat, and no matter if you bounced the boat or made the mistake, the boat was self-balancing to where any mistakes, like, it would be all right. But I think the market's definitely matured past that to where any mistakes now are catastrophic.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to put it simply, when you could sell a pound for $5,000, you could make $100 mistake while growing it and not really feel it that much. And now that pounds get sold for $500, that $100 mistake is all of a sudden, like you said, catastrophic to your business.
Right. So when you were looking at craft beer wave, right, on the back end, you were looking at the data. What metrics did you see to know that the wave was peaking or it was about to crash?
It was a lot of, honestly, the proliferation of those knockoff products. Like I mentioned, there was, for a long time, a lot of really highly original and very passionate brewers that were putting out, exciting new beers without relying on flavors, without, relying on gimmicky marketing. And, I saw our, inventory starting to back up, especially from my vantage point of, I saw the inventory at a level above the retail depletions. And I saw that inventory start backing up. And then I started feeling the pressure of our brewers coming in saying, we got to get this new, let's say, grapefruit IPA out onto the market. I got it. You got to take 6 pounds, and I can't look at the data and justify purchasing, volumes that would justify even the creation of these new products. But they were so, forced into a position where it was like, okay, I'm losing sales to grapefruit IPA. If I don't get one out right now, we're going to lose, 30 points of distribution in this state. And so it's kind of a combination of the data I was seeing in the inventory, the sell-through depletion rates, with the just increasing pressure and not desperation, but kind of that it had a hint of that to it, where, the industry was changing. People were not, you used to have real brand loyalty. People would say, oh, I always drink this IPA, or I love this brewery and I'm going to stick with that. And then they started coming and going, okay, I had that beer. What's the next new one? What's this other thing that's out there? Where's my new experience that I can get? And from a distribution standpoint, that's an incredible challenge when, your customer wants to buy a different product every time they come in. We had trucks on the road every single day. We had huge warehouses, lots of people, lots of setup. and to start rifling through small quantities of many different SKUs ended up with us holding a lot of inventory that wasn't depleting, and our retailers had a lot of inventory that wasn't depleting. And so, I got out a little earlier than I think a lot of people did, but cannabis, I know a lot of beer people that made the transition into cannabis, around the same time I did, after in Massachusetts, because of the legislation, it really opened up that opportunity. But, now you look at craft beer, I mean, even the whole beer industry is losing percentage points. A lot of that is because of cannabis. And so,
Oh yeah, I think there was a interesting study. I forgot the exact study that was cited, but I can probably find it. There was a dollar per dollar cannibalization in the markets that cannabis is opening up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which,
So,
honestly, I when I worked in craft beer, I used to tell people I sell happiness, and part of my journey with it was, I still am a certified Cicerone, kind of a sommelier for beer. I really love beer, but after a decade of drinking craft beer, I was feeling the health effects of it. I
right.
was overweight. I had, it's a hard lifestyle to live for a lot of people. And
Mm,
when I said I was selling happiness,
right.
we didn't sell cheap vodka. We didn't sell, kind of the more abusable products. But I felt that, even selling any alcohol was, you know, in a way it represented something good. It was a craft product. It was made with love. But ultimately it's a, poisonous substance. And
Right.
shifting to cannabis has really been a way for me to continue doing what I'm doing, and sharing that happiness with people without sharing the addictive and toxic side effects of the chemical we're
Yeah.
selling.
I mean, alcohol is such a weird substance, right? It's like, I don't know what it is, but it's I think alcohol has to be the most destructive, in terms of what
Yeah,
it does. Yeah. Um, yeah. Alcohol industry, I think majority of my friends are actually, believe it or not, they own liquor stores, they have convenience stores, right?
hmm,
They're a major front for all these products and outlets. And I'm having the conversation with them as well, and sometimes saying, do you feel like you're in the business where your values are lining up with what you're, like who you are as a human being versus you actually going out there and peddling the product? I wonder how many people are in alignment versus how many people are just doing a job.
right, right. And the alcohol industry on the retail side, you can make a nice living for yourself and your family and provide for people by
Right.
meeting that need. And it's we're not in a country where alcohol is going to go away again.
Mm,
It's a pretty firmly entrenched thing socially, culturally, economically. So the moral quandary, and we struggle with it in cannabis too. It's another industry just like alcohol, where a
mm,
significant portion of the people out there don't want us to exist or don't respect what we do. And we have so many millions of passionate fans and supporters, but on the other side of it, we have just as many detractors and people who are vehemently opposed to distribution of cannabis. And it's it's a
right.
moral thing that you have to make a decision about in your life. And I think it's up to anybody. If that's something you can do and want to do, and it's a good opportunity, then no judgment for me.
Right. I think in the grand scheme of things, Massachusetts is really further along and mature, but on a national level, we're not even halfway there, right?
Right.
It's it's very long game. I think this is the very first conversation me and you had where it was about in looking at the time scale and how some people are looking at the fiscal year and getting freaked out by it when they should really be looking at the time scale of the entire industry coming online as a whole throughout the national, you know, delta of time. But I think a lot of people are getting a little too lost, I feel like, in um, the chaos of the present moment, as a lot of these unexperienced operators are coming online.
Yeah, it's definitely a very chaotic time for us right now, and a predictably chaotic time, right? It's you know,
Right.
to compare it to alcohol, right? Post prohibition, we're kind of still
Mm,
in the 30s. They didn't figure out, there still is alcohol legislation going on that's changing the industry and fundamentally changing it. You look at the explosion of premixed cocktails and things that
mm,
previously were
mm.
not even feasible products because of certain federal or state liquor laws. And we have so long to go in the cannabis industry, and there's an infinitely long list of good
Right.
things that could happen to us legislatively, and just the same bad things that could happen to us legislatively. And it's important as a leader in the industry of the business. You have to account for what you can account for and de-risk what you can de-risk, and build a team that can quickly take advantage of opportunities or quickly drop things that are no longer opportunities, and adapt to the only thing we know that's actually going to happen is that things are going to change in this business.
Right. Well, let me ask you, speaking of change, when you were changing from your, liquor industry, right, beverage, and going into cannabis, what was the biggest surprise when you moved into cannabis?
The biggest surprise, I would say, the degree in which the government was involved with the regulated business. Coming
Okay.
from alcohol, we were regulated.
Hmm.
The ABCC is a government body similar to the CCC that was set up to oversee the alcohol industry. But the degree of which they trust alcohol companies to self-report and regulate. And it's not that there aren't inspections, but certainly the overwhelming, especially early in the industry, theory, when we got our license, we were the sixth license in the whole state. So the level of scrutiny and involvement from government inspectors and regulators was definitely something I was not expecting to be as present, but it was a fun challenge to learn to adapt to, and work with a more involved government agency than the ABCC was.
Got it. Yeah. Um, I always have mixed reactions whenever I'm speaking to ownership about the government agency. Um, I get I get some funny ones to where they don't outright say it, but they always start referencing like a movie scene where it's like, Arsh, I like the CCC about as much as I like my lawyer. Um, and on top of that, whenever they come rolling in, is like, for some reason, we just make them wear Tyvek suits and it gets really hot in the room all of a sudden in all of our
Yeah,
greenhouses, right? Where, yeah, it's everybody has a different strategy when it comes to the state.
yeah.
Um, but I think, I mean, what would you say your feelings are about the CCC being as involved as they are? Should they be more involved or should they be less involved? Given where the state of the Massachusetts market is, right? And where we are and how things are progressing. What are your thoughts?
Sure. So I think, the CCC is incredibly important to the industry because it
Mm,
really is the compromise that we, the producers and sellers of cannabis, have made with the government on what is required for us to operate. So in that sense, I have a
right.
lot of respect for it because, this was a humongous legislation push to get cannabis legalized, create this framework,
Mm,
and put together something that people could actually say yes to. And in that sense, we wouldn't exist without it. And it's, it serves a very important function of like allowing us to be here. I've been working with previously DPH during the medical days, the CCC now. I think they have the same growing pains that any organization has, the same difficulties, the
Right.
same, and they probably have challenges that we don't have to face as operators in the space, and we have challenges that they don't have to face as a government body. But overall, I can say, I've never been treated unfairly or hostilely by anybody from the CCC. I think, they've done a good job in getting people licensed and getting these companies open and making sure, that people are generally operating on the same level playing field when it comes to, enforcement of the rules. And they're going to have challenges just like we do. It's all, like I said, we're in the 1930s to compare it to alcohol right after prohibition still. Right. It all takes time to get figured out and optimized and solved. And certainly it can be tough as an operator, waiting for an inspection or not getting the answer you want. But ultimately,
it's very brutal when you're actually in it.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's expensive. You're paying for everything while you're waiting for that answer. It can be very frustrating, but I've always found them to be, fair and, reasonable. And, it's, to have to put together all those rules and regulations as quickly as they did with as many people involved and then enforce them, I think they're doing a pretty good job overall.
Zooming out to past cannabis and past your beverage experience, who is Matt Gambler?
Wow, that's a deep question. I am honestly a math nerd. I love math, and I've always found that business is a very practical application of my kind of search for challenges to solve and thing. I started out not as skilled as a people person in my career, and been able to rely on my analytical skills and math skills while developing the people side of my skill set. And I try to be a fair person and set a good example for anybody I'm working with. And I've been very fortunate to have employed probably 400 or 500 people in this industry over the course of my 7-8 years here. And I think I think I've been a good leader. I really try hard and try to stay somewhat humble in this kind of crazy business we're in. But
right.
Yeah.
So as you're developing your team, and I think you're overseeing some major retail growth over at Native Sun with Hudson, North Attleboro, and South Boston.
Yep.
How do you keep us on developing, I guess, your team? Like, what is your philosophy for developing your team?
Well, I think we at all levels try to develop people at Native Sun. So from the kind of entry level position all the way up to management level positions, we actually have a employee development plan. So there's about 40 different categories of things that all have associated trainings with them. And we really expect our people to take it upon themselves. We trust them to take it upon themselves to learn these things and show us that they can do them autonomously without, making a ton of mistakes. And then we reward them for doing that. I think that's a big thing. The incentive is so powerful as opposed to the punishment, right? And so we really want to give people an opportunity at our company to become good at the things that we do and then see a reward for that, whether it's a raise or a promotion or whatever form that may take. We want to have those opportunities there for people to grow their careers. And at the higher level with my direct report team here, I challenge them and I give them opportunities to take on, even if I know how to do something or I know the answer to it. I give them the project, I give them the problem, and I set the expectation that, I'm expecting you to figure this out. I'm expecting you to find the right answer. And I find that, really pushing people towards things that make them uncomfortable and challenges that maybe they don't even believe that they can overcome, and then trusting them to do it, really, really supercharges the development and the kind of forward progress that we make as a team.
What would you say is the difference between trusting them and giving them the autonomy versus um, a scenario where it, yeah, I guess what leads to a success and what leads to a failure, and giving that autonomy to that individual?
I think it's so, the trust that I have is that you can do the work however you want to do it, right? Like I'm not I you go to a math class nowadays and they say, okay, show your work, and you have to do the steps exactly the way that they say to, even if you have the right answer. It's you didn't, right? I'm not a big stickler on that stuff. It's
Hmm.
you know uh, use your mind, use your creativity, use your problem solving skills, gather the information that you need to make a good decision. And I think the biggest thing is not telling people, not telling them no or that they're wrong, but asking the right questions to move them in a forward direction. And I struggle with it personally. I love problem solving, and as a leader, I used to just say, nope, you're doing that wrong. You got to do it this way. This is how, right? And you might get an
Right.
immediate good result from that, but long term, you're devaluing the trust and taking away the autonomy from people, and you know, really centralizing the responsibility of doing everything on yourself, which as you scale into an organization with 70, 80, 100, multiple hundreds of people is just a impossible situation that you've set yourself up for failure with.
Hmm. We're going to go ahead and switch a little bit more on the dispensary side, still tying it to the people. But what do you wish the dispensary team knew about the cannabis business that, that they're um, not in touch with? Like, what do you wish you knew um, that they currently don't know? It's not in their eyes most of the time about the cannabis industry.
I'd say so. There's a two-part answer to that. So
Hmm.
this year, and we're going to continue doing this, but one of the biggest things that I push through our training and through our values and communications with the team is hospitality. I think that in general, a lot of people focus on customer service at a cannabis store. And to me, the service is I give you cannabis and you give me money. And so you can get really good at that, but we really try to impart a central core tenet of their job as being hospitality workers. And
Hmm.
so what I love, there's a great book called Unreasonable Hospitality, about 11 Madison Park. Fantastic book. We've taken a lot of those lessons and techniques and applied them to our own business. But the description of what hospitality is in that context is making people feel like they belong at Native Sun. And so we try to implement. It's there are easy things to implement, but yeah, someone if they're having how their day's going, and if they say it's bad, give them a free lighter, give them a T-shirt, give them a what's a couple bucks to turn someone's day from bad to good. And that creates more of a lasting impression on the customer as to the quality of our
Hmm.
store and the service you get than 500 efficient transactions.
Right. So, no, I love that hospitality. Yeah, I, funny you mentioned hospitality. I actually come from a hospitality background. Immigrated from uh, India in the early 2000s, and yeah, I grew up basically in a hotel. My
Mhm.
parents didn't have a house up until a couple of years ago, and I it's very interesting how you're connecting the cannabis and the hospitality component together. Um, what would you say are, aside from that one example of giving a free lighter or papers or whatever it may be, what are some other things that you have adopted from the hospitality industry? Because that's a very unique approach.
So I think one of the most obvious ones that we do, we have a signature scent in our stores. So when you come into any Native Sun store, we had a custom aroma developed that's consistent throughout all of our locations. So you get this kind of psychological feeling of returning to a place you've been before. It's not very overwhelmingly strong, but gives you that sense of like, I'm at Native Sun. This, it kind of you know lets you know you've arrived as soon as you walk in the door. And then really beyond that, it's about the communications with the team and trying to cover up some of the unfun or maybe regulatorily required parts of the experience with
Mm,
conversation, with connection with your customer, and leveraging the education we give them to form that connection with the customer, and then deliver to them an accurate recommendation for a great cannabis product at our stores. And I think there's multiple steps to it, but really it's you know whatever it is that we need to do to make people feel like when they come to our stores that we are essentially welcoming them into our home. And a lot of that is just through the interpersonal connection that a bud tender might form with
mm,
a customer.
mm. So, how do you go about keeping this each location, uh, for lack of a better term, how do you keep each location uh, consistent and staying true to the Native Sun brand and mission?
Well, we start with our values. Our training. The first thing you see in our training are our values, and that is really baked into our processes surrounding people from the get-go. So when we're bringing people onto the team or training, we're reinforcing that a lot, and those values are built around identifying the things in people that make them a good fit for the Native Son team. So if we can find out if someone's going to understand what we're going for here and has some of those traits that can really contribute to that, then we kind of get a consistency of personality or a consistency of outlook that helps to distribute those throughout the entire team across all the stores. But I would say, all three of our stores do have their own kind of individual personalities, and because we focus so much on that customer interaction, that they tend to develop, almost like a hyper local vibe that in Hudson and Attleboro is different. And if we tried to make it super consistent, we'd have to kind of sterilize both. And I think we'd lose some of that hospitality that we have in each of those stores because they've been so focused on tuning themselves to their local market, that those strategies
Right.
might not apply to another store. So instead of flattening everything for the lowest common denominator, we let them express themselves and be unique and you know make connections in the community that can increase the level of hospitality that we're providing to those customers.
Essentially, being regional in your approach, in your hospitality.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I said, the demographics of the customers that we see in each store are vastly different. The products that we sell in each store are different, and the people coming in, the kind of common personalities of people, they're shaped by the town, the region that they live in, and I think the stores do a lot better when we, and for example, part of our GMs at the stores, part of their responsibility and their job, it's not just to operate the store, it's to go out into their community and meet other business leaders and meet community associations and the neighbors, and spread our hospitality approach outside of our own walls. So we really encourage them to take control of what it takes to win in that community by gathering the information and then implementing the strategies on the sales floor.
Got it. Who would you say is the face of cannabis? And before I give you a little context on that, because of Christian and Henry Anslinger, Reefer Madness, and all those articles, right? There is a certain face of people who consume cannabis. And I think that's absolutely changed. And so who would you say is the face of cannabis now?
Wow. Honestly, I think it's a very distributed thing. Like there are cannabis is something that it seems to me that, irregardless of where you're from, who you are, what your background is, there are people in every demographic of, that you could come up with that consume cannabis. And it's one of the beauties of the plant, coming from the alcohol industry, right? Ethanol typically has a very, prescribed set of effects that it has on 100% of people. And,
right.
Part of the beauty of cannabis is that it's a journey. You can actually, based on your biochemistry and your body, you can experiment and find, something that works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So I think in that sense, it has a very broad reach that, can be a part of many, many, many different groups of people, many different demographics, and, honestly help bring us together, because it's, it doesn't have the same, medical, social implications that other recreational drugs have. And, for me, it's a great social experience, smoke a joint with someone.
Some of the best experiences have definitely been around, a great cannabis showing for sure.
Yeah.
For the next segment, Bat, this is going to be a little bit heavily people focused. And I wanted to ask you about your first job, like first job ever, where it's not working for, like a family friend. It's like first job with a paycheck, wage garnishment. I always grew up working on my family's hotels, or a hotel, my father's, and my first job ever was at Walmart, and I was a cashier. And I remember I needed to get a car, and my father helped me get a used Camry, and I had to make the car payments.
Yep.
And I was going to college, and it's like, all right. So I got my first job as a Walmart cashier, hated it. 2 weeks into it, the manager of one of the pharmacists comes up, and he's checking something out during his break. And I must have had like the most miserable look on my face. And he just goes, you should be the shining example of Walmart. They should take a photo of you and put you on their hiring board. And I was like, oh yeah, they should take a photo of you and put her in front of the pharmacy. And he started laughing, and he's like, well, how long have you been working here? And I was like, 2 weeks. And he's like, listen, you don't look like you belong here. You should probably do something with your life. Why don't you come apply into pharmacy? And I was like, that's great. So I that was my first entry into like an official job. I
Yep.
worked there for 2 years, and then I started my own business. But my first job was at Walmart, and man, oh man, I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. And after getting to that, it was just a giant pill pushing factory.
Sure.
750 to 800 prescriptions a day, nonstop in a very small town. I was surprised by the sheer number of prescriptions, but it is the pharmaceutical industry in general is a mess. But that was my first job.
Okay.
What about yours?
My first job was I was 17 years old and I worked at the now defunct Hollywood Hits movie theater in Danvers, Massachusetts.
Got it. Movie theaters.
Yeah. And I
Man,
will
oh man,
say
that's
I
yeah,
made
that's
the I made the best movie theater popcorn east of the Mississippi, in my opinion.
east of the Mississippi. Is that
Yeah.
is that a quote from Mark? Because he says east of the Mississippi, there's no sealed greenhouses.
Yeah.
So east
Yeah.
of the Mississippi, the best popcorn is made by Matt. What's the
Yes.
secret?
Yeah.
What's the recipe?
Well, so I used to make I was often on popcorn making shifts, so I'd make
Yeah.
40 bags, 40 like trash bag size bags of popcorn a day, and so you're supposed to put 2 spoonfuls of there's a yellow powder called Flavacol. You put in
Mm,
the kernels while they're cooking, which is what makes the popcorn yellow. I would put three
mm.
spoonfuls of Flavacol in. So we had
Instead of
extra
what
yellow,
was the
buttery
SOP?
popcorn.
What was
Yeah.
the SOP?
Geez, it was like a couple cups of kernels and then 3 spoonfuls. You hit a button and the oil shoots in, and then it all pops out. You bag it up, and yeah, surprisingly, people would always ask me for the fresh popcorn. It doesn't taste as good. You got to let it sit for a couple hours before it
Mm.
really gives you that like movie theater popcorn experience. But
What
yeah, that was
what's
a
the
fun
what
job. It
I
was
guess
the owner of the company was a local commercial real estate developer and landlord. He really
mm,
loved movies, so he was fortunate enough to build his own movie theater and operate it. And at the time when I worked there, we got it was an independent theater, so there was this constant battle against the AMC at the Liberty Tree Mall, kind of
mm.
down the street for they got every big ticket movie, but we got $1 Million Baby one weekend. It was we had it and the other theater didn't, so we went from 30 people on a Saturday to whole parking lot full, all hands on deck. Everybody's coming in to see this movie, and it was a cool
Yeah.
experience. I got a lot of FaceTime with the owner, who was a really nice guy, and he
Mm.
gave me a lot of good pointers for life.
Yeah. Anything that you would like to share? Any pointer that stands out?
Um, so yeah, he really took a lot of time, even though he was a very busy guy. He would come to the
Mm,
theater and he would have a conversation with every single person that worked there. As long as you wanted to go, he would talk to everybody, and that kind of connection with the people on your team, I think, is really important. And I've carried that with me for my entire career, to the point where sometimes I have to apologize for getting in people's way because I'm in the back of the store trying to talk to them while they're receiving a delivery or something.
got it. Yeah. I fall into the same category. I that was the one thing that I watched my papa do a lot. He would go in and he would talk to every single person at the property, guest, team member, back of house, everybody.
Yep.
And I always found it annoying because I just wanted to go in the pool. I just wanted to just, do me. Um, but he was just talking, and it was like, come on, I got to go to the pool. But yeah, you often look back, and at least with me, I look towards my family because they're all business owners, and
Mhm.
I draw a lot of inspiration and a lot of pride from them and the examples that they've done. Again, my father came into this country with not a lick of English. He barely
Wow.
spoke one sentence, and he was dropped into he yeah, he started working. He just picked it up, but yeah, I look at them for a lot of inspiration, which I'm pretty sure you have a lot of people right in your life as well that you look towards um, different aspects of life, right? Inspiration.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so in terms of let's Matt, we've had such a good time diving and just talking about everything in general. I completely forgot to ask you about how business is going. How are the dispensaries, and how is the cultivation? I mean, managing the cultivation while it was coming up off the ground, right? Along with the
Yep.
dispensaries, that's quite the juggle. But how's business?
Business is good. Yeah, we've it's as you said, last year it has been a challenge opening a grow and a new store in the same
Right.
year is always very, very challenging. And grow facilities in particular are difficult. I know I'm
It's a
preaching to the
big
choir
obstacle.
here, but yeah, you start the thing up, you get your final license, and you plant all your plants, and then you have to wait for the plants to grow and dry and cure and be harvested
It
and
doesn't
prepared into
it doesn't
product.
give
So
you anything. It doesn't
right.
give
So
you
you're
anything, but
you're
it
paying
demands
100%
more
of the
out of you.
bills
It's like give
for
me, give me, give
months.
me, give me.
Yeah, it just it gets more and more and more, and planning
It's
all
a
that out,
baby,
and
man. It's
yeah, it's a really
yeah.
it's a real
It's
challenge.
a
So
it's a yeah. So how have you navigated that challenge, Matt?
well, I really prescribe to a zero-based budgeting system. So
Mm,
particularly in times of when you're spending money and not bringing any in, really being extra judicial and very analytical about every dollar you're spending, and
hmm
putting the extra level of challenge on my team to provide well thought through and reasoned justification for every expenditure. We've carried that forward since I've been on the team here at Native Sun, and I think that there's you know a lot of things that other businesses do that could apply to cannabis, but might not have the best ROI or might not have any ROI. And it's a huge mistake during the startup period to throw cash at you know like high ticket sponsorships or big marketing
Right.
partnerships or tons of high quality merch to give out. And these are things that businesses do, but recognizing the situation you're in and the pathway that you need to take to become successful, um, you know prioritizing the highest return investments in the places where spending money is going to provide immediate and multiplicative value is super, super important. And it's been tough because a lot of the stuff that you can't justify is the most fun things to do, like sponsoring
Right.
concerts or whatever it may be. And so we've taken an approach where we prioritize what we use our money for, and really put the work into the justification and the unification of all of that knowledge into a plan that allowed us to get this grow built, get it stood up, plant the plants, grow everything, never missed a payroll. Made it through, and now we're selling out of all of our inventory and running a fairly efficient grow here.
Nice. It feels good and confident to say never missed a payroll. It feels very good to say that.
Yeah.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. And it's tough. I unfortunately for me, but also fortunately for me, when I joined this company, the grow facility had already been built. Things were already designed, and there were a lot of pitfalls to step into, and a lot of traps along the way. And we took what we had and navigated it in a way that within a year we're steady, stabilized, and not chasing our tails in this very challenging market right now.
There's a quote. I don't know if I shared this with you, Matt, but it basically said it was you remember those in high school, you have those, if you win like a championship in like a sport, you get like a little banner for that year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they have all these banners in like the gym. There was one banner that I saw somewhere and it said, "We didn't do it because it was going to be easy. We did it because we thought it was going to be easy."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
That
I
was
feel
honestly
like
that was one of the things I learned very quickly in the cannabis business, was that it was the opposite of easy. And
yeah,
I tell people that a lot of my old colleagues and friends, and they are all interested in getting in the cannabis industry, and I always tell them, we have all the same BS that every other company has to deal with, plus half the people don't want us around, plus the regulations in the government, plus we're taxed unfairly. And you really have to make a conscious decision about getting into this industry, because it can be very brutal and unforgiving, and the future is very unclear, so there's a lot of risk in it. And it's certainly a place where people can come and make a lot of accumulate wealth for themselves and have career success and do amazing things, but those things come with a lot of sacrifice as well.
Yeah, I think business in general is hard work, and
Yeah.
it's very evolutionary as well, to where if you don't do the right things, you will not survive. You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, especially since the market's matured, the band on if you can make a mistake and how expensive that mistake is. I mean, those are your margins that you're playing with now. It's very
Right.
different, very different. And so in the emerging market, in the emerging, field that we're developing in, how are you competing against the rest in terms of your stores? Obviously, hospitality is a very big component, you said,
Yep.
but are there specific tactical things that you're doing in terms of trends that you're capitalizing on? How do you get more people or more dollars in your door?
Well, so this year we've really put a lot of effort into digital marketing. I have
What is digital
tried
marketing?
so web optimization, SEO, search optimization, not really social media, and then email has been our big focuses. What we've seen is you can spend a lot of money on billboards and not see a great return. You can do a lot of events and you might get some return. You might have a good one, you might have a bad one. But the thing that produces results is, and it's a battlefield out there on Google. I mean, every single company is trying to get to the top of a list, and to get ahead on the list means someone has to go down on the list. So it's a war of attrition almost. And we've really concentrated our financial investment into marketing towards the things that we see yielding the best results. We see the results through a lot of this digital marketing stuff, where you buy a billboard, and unless the customer tells you, hey, I saw that billboard and now I'm here, you have no idea.
Right. So you're having more luck with the PPC or pay per click campaigns than
We don't do
the
any
traditional.
advertising.
Mm,
I think there's different schools of thought on that, but we're really trying to optimize search, Google Maps, and convert people into the email channels that
mm.
we really lean on for direct communication with the customers.
Got it. Speaking of direct communications, I have two examples I want to really quickly share with you. So there is a liquor store, or some of my friends are, they're in the store, liquor, hospitality industry, and one of them is the highest volume store or regional area in Canada. And one of my friends who's, he's the youngest VP of a Chevy dealership at this time, and he
Mhm.
oversees 6 dealerships. He's 27, and he's the VP of finance.
Wow.
Brilliant guy, killer in sales. And he was telling me about, um, essentially saying his friend Bhavin had a liquor store, and the only difference about that liquor store, Matt, was he had, let's say, per POS system, he gave everybody an iPhone. So it was a company iPhone, and their
Mhm.
job was at the checkout, whoever the customer was, saying, "Hey, listen, would you, if I get a deal in, would you like me to text you? I can hook you up. This is my personal number." And just that conversation saying, "Oh, sure, you're going to message me directly." Like, yeah, absolutely. When they see that blue bubble, the likelihood of them, when they see an iPhone, was just higher of them giving the number. So this guy basically had 4 iPhones, 4 POS systems, and everyone that would come on rotation, they would essentially pick up the phone. That's their phone for the shift.
Yep.
And anytime he had everything linked up to a central CRM system to where they know, like, hey, so and so is buying tequila, so and so is buying vodka, so and so is buying this at a regular interval. This is the bourbon. And any single time inventory would come hit the CRM, it would automatically formulate a list of people to say, hey, the inventory would match with this person. And then the employees would just start texting. And all they would say is, hey, yo, I got the bottle for you. When are you coming through? And it would just be a single sentence, right? It was pretty scripted, and his return rate was just through the roof.
Yeah.
And so, and for 4 iPhones, and again, just the personal touch, the perception was, hey, we're giving our number, our numbers are being exchanged. But of course, it's the stores, right? And then it would just be on rotation. And of course, you would
Yeah.
have some guys that are trying to like hit on the girls and be like, hey, like, so it like essentially because they're communicating, right? But at the same time, obviously, there's policies on the back end to where you don't take your phone with you, you leave it at the store. And so whoever
Right.
comes the next day, they pick it up, and they respond, right? And there's always the layer of professionalism.
Yeah.
But he had with that strategy, I think he was the highest volume store in the entire area, and he was crushing it. I think his store was doing north of 1 million um,
Wow.
and a month. And the other example that I had was I was with my girlfriend in Manchester, and I was looking for something interesting to do. And so I just typed in things to do in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I got an article that I clicked on Google. It was the first article. And it was like activities and things to do in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I read the article and I was like, great, I'm going to go to this park and I'm going to go to this restaurant here. Awesome. Then I scrolled at the very top, and the article was written by Escape Room New Hampshire. So Escape Room, I'm assuming, is the large national franchise. New Hampshire,
Yep.
Massachusetts, and so on and so forth, as subsidiaries. And they had written that article because I guess they wanted to be the local regional subject matter authority in Manchester, New Hampshire. And
Yep.
so
Exactly.
guess what? Guess what we did that night?
I'm gonna say escape room.
So it, it perfectly converted me, right?
Yep.
To where, it's, so I guess my question to you is, are you approaching or are you looking at any, I mean, you said email, right? But I guess, are you doing any creative outreaches like that? And do you have any of those, like, um, search intent based writing underway as part of your SEO plan, or have you looked at that angle?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a full we do kind of a two-part strategy there. So
Yeah.
similar to the escape room, right? Creating strong local authority for your Google My Business page. That in that example, right? You're getting an article, you're technically advertising for all these other businesses, but what you're really doing is backlinking to these companies who are
Right.
also strong local authorities, right? So you're creating a digital community of businesses that matter to the Google search engine in that area. So on the digital side, absolutely, we really try to be a prominent presence in our neighborhood and provide digital resources that can not only benefit us, but benefit, someone who's looking for something to do in South Boston or the Seaport or whatever. But then
Right.
we shifted that to our physical or in real life marketing strategy, where we do a lot of events with local businesses. We've had parties with local restaurants where we do kind of a cannabis inspired cocktail bar event and have 100 people there. And the goal for us, and what I tell people is like, look, I've got a digital presence in this area, you've got a digital, we both have audiences. Why don't we expose your audience to my audience and my audience to your audience, grow ourselves together, and neither of us have to spend a fortune on ads or outreach or whatever. We can just, partner up, do something kind of small. And we've done some really fun stuff. We had a cannabis terpene beer launch 420 event with Castle Island Brewing in Southie, a really fantastic brewery down there. We did a cannabis terpene cocktail with the Broadway and the Nimbus Vape Company. So we had three companies come together to do something. And similarly, like, it really, you can pull one of these off for a couple $100, and what ends up happening is that I can go, my team can go, and we can have a one-on-one conversation with 75 people about our brand. And there's no digital marketing that can give you that. And you could pay 10 grand for a booth at a big cannabis event, and you might have less one-on-one conversations with people because they're just walking around, going to all the booths.
Let's not even get started about all the cannabis events and booths and that entire ecosystem. Man, oh man, that's like an entirely, like, that's a 2-3 hour episode right there, just talking about
Sure.
the entirety of that construct.
Yep.
But no,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
again, like I said, there's things that other industries do, like huge trade shows and expensive sponsorships and things that I don't know if we're mature enough and things are optimized to the point where that stuff really makes sense for and that's just my opinion. There are a lot of companies that take that strategy, and some have been successful with it, but for me, I'd rather spend a couple $100 on doing a local event and talk to 50 people, because I can do that 20 times for what it costs to do one booth, and I'll probably get to talk to 20 times the amount of people doing it.
right. And those people are they're not going to be shit talking about your product. They'll actually buy your product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not getting, I don't know, I don't know if all the listeners of the podcast here have been to all these events, but I did them in beer. They were worse in beer because everyone was drunk, but even in cannabis, you can only smoke so many joints and only get so many sales pitches before it all just kind of blurs together.
Right.
And, you really have to make a strong impression at those to get a new customer or a new smoker that likes your flower. But if you partner with a local business, blend audiences with them, there's a lot of kind of pre-prescribed trust in the business that you're partnering with. that, you can get in front of customers, people who don't know about your brand, and talk to them, and in an environment where it's, not chaotic and not, um, how many free samples can I grab type of thing. It's, a fun event, and, you could, those casual conversations turn into customers very frequently.
That's more of a solid strategy than arbitrarily putting up booths at events and hoping for the best. It's like it's not even there's first of all, there's no birds in the sky and you're shooting.
Right.
Like it's you're just hoping. It's a lot. I feel like a lot of companies are just firing at thin air and just saying we did an event, we did an event, we did an event, and not really getting any substance.
Yeah.
But no, that sounds like a solid strategy, man.
Yeah, I
Aside
think
from
so. It's been working pretty well for us. It's hard to say because we don't buy the booths at the event, so I don't really know how that would work out for us. But
I I've done it twice now, and I can tell you that's you know it, that's all the business they're gonna get out of me. It's not
there you
it's
go.
not
Fair
worth
enough.
yeah, it's not worth it. I think your approach is a lot more impactful, and plus, I mean, you're focusing on what gets people in the door at
Right.
the end of the day, right? And so that's a way better approach. But looking at the cannabis retail and looking at the future, what excites you? And do you see any emerging trends that could reshape the way dispensaries operate in the next few years?
Hmm. Um, I think probably the biggest thing that could potentially reshape what's going on are higher degrees of automation within the store. Um, you know, most cannabis companies I've worked for, a lot of people that I know, we have kind of fragmented tech stacks, multiple layers of software that may or may not speak to each other. A lot of disparate systems, and then very labor heavy inventory operations and fulfillment operations. So it seems to me that there are still a lot of inefficiencies that haven't been solved for yet. Maybe the economic conditions don't support the investment in solving them quite yet, but we know the cannabis industry is going to change, and whether we see consolidation, which will start to open up opportunities for more connected systems, or the cost of kind of a machine-based fulfillment or a more automated fulfillment kind of starting to come down where it can make sense through the cannabis industry. I think those are two things, that could really revolutionize kind of the way that these stores are operated. Are
Do you think
kind of
AI
crowded
has any
market?
room?
Certainly, I think AI seems to present nearly an unlimited opportunity for anything digital to be automated. But for our company, like we use AI, but we don't rely on it anywhere yet, because I think the the focus for us has been on simplifying our processes, streamlining our processes, and gathering the data on them to really understand like the true efficiency of things, and where best to expend the energy and cash investment in automating stuff. One of the I think I heard this from Elon Musk. He said something about you have to make sure you're automating the correct process, because you're wasting a lot of time if you automate an incorrect one. And because of what I just said, your typical cannabis company is operating on 4, 5, 6 different independent software systems that are all,
Right.
Depending on how much money
Kind
they
of.
spend, not tied together or loosely tied together. Maybe, but
One's over here, the other one's all the way here. There's like
right.
three people that require the communication to fill the data silo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So collecting that data to understand the efficiency of your processes becomes an unaffordable challenge when you're dealing with systems that don't speak to each other, and you have computers doing some of it and people doing some of it and multiple locations. So my focus has really been on like, let's simplify things, let's remove steps in our processes, let's try to manually figure out the way that this operates best while we have all these people, while we're, you know, operating some pretty high volume stores. Like this gives us enough data and enough flow to really like fine tune these things. And then my assumption is that the cost of automation is going to, you know, come down exponentially over time. So maybe by the time we've got things a little more optimized and figured out, systems will be in place that better collect and store the data, and then bringing in some AI automation can really help us. But right now, especially in a regulated environment, you know, we can't afford to have bad data going into metric or going to the state or whatever it may be. So, you know, the temptation is there to say, okay, I'm going to sit down and automate this whole thing and do all this coding with AI, and then 3 weeks later, you know, no one's using your system anymore, and it doesn't work right, and you know, you've invested that time and money into something that has no yield yet, and you know, that
Right.
that level of understanding on what it is that we need to automate, what's the most cost-effective thing to automate right now. I don't feel like we have that, and you know, I know it's kind of the big thing right now, you know, pushing towards that automated AI. You know, you got your AI assistant and your AI finance person and all that, but
Right.
it's you know, if you don't, it's still just a computer. So if you don't tell it to do the right thing, it's not going to do the right thing, even if it can come up with a couple steps in between. What do I think about the
Okay.
role of branding in the cannabis industry? Great question. Um, I think my experience with it has been, I think, a little more unique. You know, starting at Theory, we were a retail brand that also produced flower and cannabis products. And similarly with Native Sun, you know, we were very strongly established as a retail brand years before we even made a single gram of flower.
Mm.
So from that perspective, what I've seen is, you know, the biggest lever for us in launching our flower brand was the fact that we have, you know, 40,000 plus customers coming to our stores every month, that we can distribute this stuff to a large amount of people very quickly. And something I saw in the beer industry was, you know, you could spend the most money on marketing, you could have the best product in the world, but if you don't have distribution, you're done for. And the best example of that is, you know, I saw time and time again, it was not the best hard seltzer that became the best selling seltzer. It was the seltzer that had the ear of the distributor the most, or had the control over the distributor the most, that became successful. So they got into the most number of stores, they got their product out to the most retailers, the most bars, and over time they would always win the game. Their brands, and you know, oftentimes it was the major, you know, Miller Coors corporations that were coming out with, you know, the, like I said, that chasing the tail, like everybody's copying the new hot product, and you know, they leverage their distribution to win those battles. And so that's something we've done with Native Sun, is that, you know, the flower brand is really just part of the retail brand. We're in 100 stores around the state outside of our own, but you know, ultimately, like it being the same company is limiting to us, in that, you know, there are people out there that might say, hey, you know, this is a advertisement for a retail store, right on, you know, it says our name right on the flower jar, and it's important for us to maximize the amount of product that we're moving through our own stores and share the things that we create with as many of our retail customers as possible, so that we can spread as much of the product out to as many people. And maybe they shop at a different store, but they really like our product, and they can kind of help us grow that way. So I don't try to build the brand with social media, with billboards, with festivals or event booths or things like that. Those are all very traditional brand building techniques. Really try to focus on, let's through our retail stores get as many people to try our product as possible. And we feel very confidently that when they try our product, they'll continue to buy it. We grow a good quality flower, and let it grow from the ground up, instead of spending all the money to be up here and pushing it down on the consumer. And I think, honestly, I've seen, not only in cannabis, but in craft beer and in the beer industry as well. I mean, people start 1,000 brands a day. I mean, it's crazy. There's a new brand, it seems to be all modern business, right? Some big equity company owns all these different brands, and they are
right,
kind of this ethereal thing that really
have you heard
ultimately
about
relies on
ghost
good
kitchens?
distribution.
Have you heard about ghost kitchens, Matt?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example of
Yeah.
it. And there's cannabis ghost kitchen brands out there, that it's the same product in a different bag or a different jar. And,
The most when I love stories of business, but I saw this story and I just could not stop laughing, Matt. It was a DoorDash business
Mhm.
with a DoorDash storefront, and it was a Chinese restaurant with over 28 different POS systems and over 28 different brands
Yep.
operating in New York City, and they were absolutely crushing it. They had a full-time VA in Korea that was managing all the orders on a rolling basis. And it's
Wow.
just, I feel like a lot of these um companies are, again, it's just a shotgun approach, but it very much sounds like a Chinese restaurant with 21 brands, and they had the best Nashville hot chicken sandwich
There
on
you
the
go.
DoorDash menu from a Chinese restaurant.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, that I say to my team a lot, and I really believe this, is that if any of us actually knew what made a good brand, we would already be so rich that we would not need to work at a cannabis company. It's right. It's like people launch brands all the time that go nowhere. You to actually have words and images that truly connect with people is a very rare and fleeting thing. And so, the spending of money on building your brand and all these things sound good, and they certainly apply in some industries, but for we're not Coca-Cola, we're not Ford, we're 3 stores in a small factory. And I think a lot of people kind of pretend that they're something bigger than they are, or they rightfully have aspirations of being a lot bigger than they are. But if you spend like that, you can really get yourself in a bad position here, because in cannabis, especially because of how regulated advertising and we're a 21 plus product, like, it's those channels to build the brand are highly coveted by alcohol and tobacco companies, very expensive, and do not have the reach that the kind of like a t-shirt company could get. We're
Right.
not selling online, we're not selling on Instagram, we're not. So if you take the strategy of, okay, I need 10 million eyeballs on my logo tomorrow, how are you going to convert any of those into sales if they have to drive all the way to North Attleboro to actually buy the stuff.
Hmm. So Matt,
So,
suppose,
God, sorry.
yeah, I said suppose you you were starting a dispensary.
Hmm.
It was in the smack dab middle of a busy area, let's just say Boston. There is plethora of competition around you. You have $0. You have great inventory, great selection, but you have $0, great staff. How would you compete? And what would you do on day one?
I would do exactly what I did when we opened up our store in South Boston. I think a lot of the stuff I've been talking about, it's very recent to us. We opened in October of last year, um, coming off the heels of opening our grow. So certainly cash was on the tighter side then. And, what we did was what I described. We focused locally. We um, really tried to optimize and supercharge our online presence. And then we connected with the community to bring people into the store. And once they're there, we treat them in a very hospitable way. And I think that hospitality approach is something that, I've applied to every aspect of my life, but is very successful in retail. There are so many cannabis stores now, and I learned this in the liquor industry through liquor retail. It's
Mhm.
if you can't answer the question, why would someone drive by 3 other stores to come to mine? Then you're not doing things right. And for me, the reason why people would drive past another cannabis store to come to mine is because you feel like you belong here. We go the extra mile to make sure that we form a connection with you and we get you the product you need, and you leave with a smile on your face and you leave saying, God, I love that place. And it's not for everybody. We're not the busiest stores in the state. We don't sell hyper discounted product like some people do, but we've built a really great business on you know treating our customers with a lot of care and a lot of love and forming that connection with them, and they keep coming back.
Got it. Matt, this has been a great conversation. Before we wrap up, what is a question that you would like to ask our next interviewee?
Um, what mistake have you made that turned into uh, the most positive long-term benefit in your career in cannabis so far?
Do you have a story on that? You're right.
Do I have a story on that? I have a lot of them of early on people that I personally, our personalities clash, or that their personalities clash with the team, that we were quick to um, let them move on to another opportunity, or cut them off the team, so to say, who ended up doing really fantastic things in the industry. And seeing that, going through that, it's a really tough time when you're separating someone from your company. Mentally,
Mm.
it's one of the worst experiences that they're going to have, and it's very difficult from a leadership perspective. But that seeing that happen a few times really slowed me down and started to give me the ability to be curious as to why things aren't working, instead of just saying this isn't working, and ask myself that next level of questioning and really try to understand the situation. And what that's done is, my teams have great tenure at our company, and we develop them and work with them through the challenges, and get the best out of them, instead of taking an approach of like, okay, go find something else and we'll bring someone in new and hopefully they're better. Um, and that early on, I definitely lost some relationships with people who, you know, it was a premature decision, and ultimately had we not lost that, maybe it, with a little extra work on our part, could have worked out for the long term and really been a great relationship. So, some of those mistakes were definitely early in my career
Yeah.
in cannabis and have stuck with me, to this day.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing, man. Um, the mistake I made earlier in the cannabis game was I I made a decision out of emotion.
Hmm.
And there's one singular instance that I remember where I had multiple municipalities where I was getting my license. And my top pick had basically said no. I had three options on the table: Pittsfield, Lee, and Windsor. And
Hmm.
Windsor was the it was a cheaper option. Pittsfield was my secondary option, and Lee was my third option. And I remember I had my consultant who was helping me with the town meeting. I had my investor that flew in, because and things were with the town, attorney was all kosher. But when we got there, clearly there was opposition,
Hmm.
and overnight my project basically blew up. I lost my investor, I lost my project, and I remember that night after the town meeting, I was just I was just driving around like Berkshire County, because my investor had pulled out, um, and I just remember being just so hopeless, man. This is it. I've been working at this for a year and a half. Like, this is it. And even as I talk about it right now, I'm noticing a little bit of fear seeping in, and this is exactly what I felt back then.
Hmm.
And in that time, I made a decision that was, now looking back at it, completely rash. And basically, so I that had fallen out, and so it was like, okay, well, there were these other two towns that are still pending. Pittsfield was a little bit ways away, and Lee was, a little bit closer to the horizon. But um, me pivoting and finding another town would have taken 6 months, right?
Yeah.
It would have added 6 months to my timeline, if not more. Now looking back at it, it would have added roughly 9 months to a year to my
Yeah.
timeline. And in the interim, I had this development opportunity in Lee, but it was a lot more money up front to develop that property in order to get it up and ready. And it was, should I wait? Should I pivot? Should I move? Right? No investor, money's pulled out, quarter in the hole. And I remember making a decision, which was a very expensive decision in the interim. And I remember questioning myself, like, why am I making this decision? Is it because of fear? Is it because I'm recognizing the time scale of, like, if I find another property, it's going to be 9 months? Like,
Yeah.
what is And it was such a confusing time for me. But after, in hindsight, hindsight's 2020. I look back at it and I recognize that I was right and wrong. I made the decision in the time scale, but in which ended up being the right decision because I'm where I need to be. But
Right.
in the grand scheme of things, it was still made with an emotional tang, and I need to be a lot better at removing that even further, to
Yeah.
make sure that you know I there is no rush. It's I should not make a decision with haste, even though it did work out. But now I also have that experience under my belt that um, the data and emotions have to be completely separate,
Right.
and underlying all of that has to be robust patience, and there can be no haste.
You always need a good sense of urgency in this business, but you never want to move too quickly because it's so complicated. And like, sometimes you get put in these positions to make decisions that really affect the future of not only,
Oh,
your company,
they're
but
hun-
all the
they're
people that
tens
work
of
for
millions
it.
of dollars.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you also don't want to get paralysis either, which is another thing, right? And getting, not not getting so overwhelmed to where you're just frozen. But yeah, I think not the mistake, that I can probably learn from is in recognizing is um, being centered, having patience, and frankly taking a deep breath. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's it's funny. Sometimes it doesn't take that long to take a step back and think through something, and either know you got to go a different direction or know you're headed in the right way. It could be 10 seconds of just true calm.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Sometimes you got to take more, but
I like to remind myself that I am in complete control and I can change my life with one decision, Matt. I
yeah,
mean, me and you can say, fuck it right now and say, let's go grab some drinks and get a bottle of Jack and get into a car. And with that one decision, we would forever change our lives. Right.
sure. Yep.
Um, and so it does give me great confidence and power to know that, yes, you really can change your life with just one decision. Right.
Yeah.
So, Matt, thank you so much for your insights. It's clear that Native Sun is in great hands. To everyone
Thanks, Harsh.
listening, where can they find you and learn more information about Native Sun?
So you can find us at nativesuncannabis.com, Native Sun Cannabis on Instagram. Uh, I think that's probably the two most common places there.
Awesome, man. Well,
Yeah,
it's
and
definitely an
then
exciting time for cannabis retail, and I'm pretty sure they'll, I definitely am going to come to your store and check out the unique smell. I think that's something I haven't
please
noticed
do.
before, but yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely will check it out.
very subtle, but yeah. And from the hotel, not an idea that we invented, but it's
Yeah.
definitely a common theme in a lot of big hotels now is the
Oh yeah.
signature set.
Um, yeah, I did a conversion for an IHG property. We bought it when it was their Frankenstein Formula Green, which is, it was a Holiday Inn, and we
Hmm.
converted the Holiday Inn because it was outdated. It wasn't going to get renewed, and so we converted that into a Holiday Inn Express because they had a higher threshold for Holiday Inns. And we went
Yep.
through a conversion process, and they have it literally in their catalog. It's a smell machine, and the smell machine
Yep.
has it's the same. It's for every single brand. For Holiday Inn Express, it's the same smell. For
Yeah.
Holiday Inn, it's the same smell, right?
Yep.
And so, my office at the time was right next to where that machine was located. And I'll be honest, like every single time I go into a Holiday Inn Express, like, and this still happens. Um, as I walk into a Holiday Inn Express, like, because my mindset was I was the operator, so when I would go in, that smell was linked to me working.
Yeah.
Even now, if I walk into a Holiday Inn Express, I will instinctively call my manager and say, "Hey, what's our occupancy rate? What's our ADR for the day? Like, how's everything going?" You seriously, because the
Yeah.
smell is it is very deeply tied to it, to where like it'll just remind me to check in on my property,
Yep.
and it's yeah, so powerful experience, man.
So I truly hope that when people come into my store and they smell that smell, they think in their mind, man, I'm about to get some great weed.
Yeah, no, that's a good association to have. I mean, can you imagine if I think, I mean, you might have to do a little bit of a customer survey and saying, hey, when you come to our store, what do you think of, right? And just
Yeah.
not labeling the smell directly and seeing if they notice it. But if they get the vibe of it, that means that combination is definitely working.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Matt, again, thank you so much for tuning in. And
Hey, thanks,
yeah,
Harsh. I appreciate
really
you having me,
excited.
man.